We're back with Vermont Viewpoint. I'm Rick Singari. Medical talk, science. We're getting a ton of it from Dr. Fauci, Dr. Levine, and many others. And they're doing their jobs well, but sometimes it's all, science-y. And you just want to hear it from someone who can explain it in your terms, who can digest it a little and make you understand why you're being asked to do the stuff you're being asked to do in this pandemic. My next guest is one of those people. Her name is Lindsey, and she proudly brags that she's the nerdy girl in chief at Dear Pandemic. She is, but she's also a clinical professor of business administration at Dartmouth's Tuck School of Business. And although she'll modestly deflect praise like this, she's rather brilliant. Lindsey Leininger, welcome to Vermont Viewpoint.
Rick, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Listeners, if you've got COVID questions, vaccine concerns, pandemic problems, bring them on. Our numbers are 244-1777, 877-291-8255, and our email is vtviewpoint@radiovermont.com. So you're this nerdy girl in chief at Dear Pandemic. What is Dear Pandemic?
Well,
and that's not D-E-E-R, it's D-E-A-R, as in Dear Pandemic.
That's right, or Dear Abby, the advice column from which we got our inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
So Dear Pandemic is a public education campaign that provides trustworthy and timely information about all things life during a pandemic.
And how was it formed? Who are in it?
So we are an all-female team of scientists and clinicians, and an early follower dubbed us the Nerdy Girls, and the name has just kind of stuck. So we are a dozen women scientists and clinicians who take questions and answer them with as much honesty and kindness as we can. We're about 55,000 followers strong on Facebook, and we also have a website and Instagram and Twitter profiles too.
What do you hope that you're providing?
Rick, in my heart of hearts, I am just hoping that we are helping people feel a little more educated and empowered to make good decisions for themselves and their families right now during this really rotten time.
Yeah, it is kind of a rotten time. And again, I'm glad you boil it down that quickly. Why was this something that you just had to be involved in?
So I teach people how to make sense of medical data. That is actually my day job here at Dartmouth. And in the past, that's primarily involved policymakers and executives and future executives, my MBA students. So I was like, you know what? I think I might have some good tools to help. I am paid to teach people how to think about medical data. And I think with some small adaptations, that might work on Facebook. I mean, crazy idea, right? But I think we might be onto something.
Yeah, you use Facebook. Explain how you get the word out. You got all these followers. You're taking kind of the message to the people in the right way now.
That's right. And we started with friends and family. I mean, a lot of us are friends and colleagues on the team, predating the pandemic. And we joined together to answer our family's questions on Facebook, right? Like we were all getting really similar questions. People might remember back in March, like, oh, do I need to wipe down my groceries, for example?
Oh, right.
So our team decided to take these questions from our friends and family on as a collective. And then it just kind of grew by word of mouth from there. And now we have this beautiful community on Facebook. I think as a collective, we've done almost 300 traditional media appearances like this one. And we're just really committed to helping people stay safe and stay sane during the pandemic. That's our motto.
I was really proud to see that 2 of my Facebook friends had already been following you when I jumped on. So
Yay,
I know. It's like now there's a little community of us. One here in Vermont, one's down in Boston now. And you mentioned the question about wiping off your groceries when you get them home. What are a couple other kinds of questions that you get asked?
Well, it really depends on what's most timely. So, we surf the news cycle just like everybody else, right? Like we get confused and befuddled and are trying to make sense of all the emerging science. And right now there are two topics that our community really has top of mind. And the first is schools. Our community is national in scope, and many have had children out of school since last March, out of in-person school. So that's a consistent hot topic. And then the other big one, of course, is vaccines. And Rick, I'm really excited because 3 of the nerdy girls are actually experts in building vaccine confidence.
Wow.
So we're doing, I know, right? We're just doing a lot of messaging around the safety and the trust that people can have in the vaccines.
This is fabulous. You got a dear pandemic, and you've got your own testing team, your own team that can kind of parse out what's going on with vaccines. I love that. When you started, was there a lot of skepticism you were getting about COVID and its existence?
Rick, there is, and I'm a native Texan, and there's still a lot of skepticism back home, so it's still something that we contend with. To be totally candid, we get some pretty nasty trolls. We hide them. We move on. But yes, there's a lot of denialism. That is a part of our work. And, we try to keep an open mind to anyone who has an open heart. But just straight up nastiness just won't do.
I get that. So how do you do the research? When questions come up, or, you're following something and you say, oh, hey, nerdy girls, we need to do some investigating into this. What kind of investigation do you do so you got the right 411?
What a great question. I love talking about our nerdy process. So we as a team range from immunology to family medicine to health policy and economics and epidemiology and everything in between. So often we have our own internal expert who knows exactly what we need to be reading. But one of the other beautiful things is that when we have an issue that we don't know about, we have made a huge network of friends and colleagues and partners across all of the health sciences with this work. So we have a really extensive network with other scientists. And then we are very quick reads when it comes to medical and science data, because that's what we do for our day jobs.
Do the nerdy girls ever disagree and debate topics?
Oh, Rick, you got 12 MD and PhD trained women on a team. We definitely have spirited debate within our team. And I think that that's healthy because it demonstrates we have a diversity of opinions and backgrounds on our team. And also, I think it's really important to share this with others because there's also a humility and a modesty about what the data can say in such a new and uncertain situation.
Lindsey, not everyone trusts the science of things today. Why do you think that is?
I think we have had a really tough backdrop against which science has been tested. And I think there are a couple of things that have made it difficult. And I do think that leadership at the top doubting science can make things more difficult. So a politician of any affiliation, it doesn't matter if they're a Democrat or a Republican, who is out in public denigrating science, does make my job harder. So there's that. I think the other thing, and something that I really try to stress, is that science is a method, not a fixed set of facts. So we need to beware of scientists who don't change their minds, which I think is confusing, right? Because we're like, wait a minute, the scientists said we do need to be wiping down our groceries, and now they say we don't. Well, that's because we've learned that COVID doesn't spread very easily on surfaces. So I think the fact that we're learning so much so quickly about a new disease, which means that there's going to be some shifts in scientific guidance, can understandably be confusing and can erode trust.
Wow, I might have to get this as a tattoo. Science is a method, not a fixed set of facts. If I've learned nothing else today, that's really gold. That's really something important to know about and to kind of hold on to, because we do find, that sometimes this was what science believed at one point, but we've tested it and used the method, and now we've learned so much more. Okay, Lindsey, I want to learn some stuff. First of all, I know you nerdy girls love the SMART principles. What are they?
We love our Stay Smart principles. Yes, so S is for space, 6 feet or more. M is for mask, keep it on. A is for air, keep it fresh, outside as best as possible. R is for restrict, keep your social bubble as small and stable as possible. And T is for time, keep interactions with those outside your household as short as possible. So stay smart while we all hold on tight to our hope that's in the form of a vaccine.
And we'll talk a little bit about the vaccine in just a moment. But it's holiday time, so, how should we be behaving? We all want to get together. We all want the traditional get-togethers that we know and love. But how should we approach the holidays that are just ahead?
Yeah, Rick, we are getting this question a lot. And, boy, it's tough, right? Because the things that we hold as sacred are the things that facilitate this virus spreading. And I think that's what's really awful about this virus. So what we've been counseling people to do is to hold on to the emotion and what's sacred about the holidays and try to do it in a safer way. So I mentioned earlier, I'm a native Texan. Typically, I travel back home to Christmas. I can't do that this year for safety, so I'll be Zooming with my parents. I'll be Zooming with my aunts. I will be trying to bake my own cheese enchiladas. They won't be as good as those back home, but I'm trying to hold on to that tradition because it just means so much to me.
Yeah, I had family, cousins, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews on Thanksgiving. Zoom for, I think I kept it open for about 5 or 6 hours, and it was an absolute incredible thing to just have people kind of come in and out, and, at any given time you'd have 3 or 4 to about 8 or 9 people. We had one from Australia join us, and it was as wonderful as any Thanksgiving I've ever been involved with. So you can still do all those things, still feel the love of family and friends. You just have to be a little bit more creative, and we'll do it again for a few hours on Christmas Day. I know on Facebook you had someone write, Lindsey, that their religion requires them to attend services, and that's what they'll be doing. So how do you respond to something like that?
That's a great question, and it's a sensitive one, right? Mm-hmm. So, again, we honor what's sacred, and for many, many people, that is the most sacred thing in their lives. Now, I grew up Catholic, and I know in my home diocese, there's a dispensation, so you can attend services online, which is great. So, again, I think there are a lot of alternative ways to celebrate, and especially right now during this season of the holiest holidays for many faith traditions. Right. There's a lot of online options. I do think going outside is an option that is good and worthy, even in the cold in Vermont, New Hampshire. We're pretty hardy.
We are.
So celebrating religious ceremonies outside to the extent that, the congregation is open to that. And, again, these SMART principles can really help. And some of us don't have choices, whether it be school or work, right? We have to go indoors. And again, there are ways to stay smart in whatever situation your life requires.
Yeah. Well, the vaccines have started to roll out. Are you surprised that it happened as rapidly as it has, that we're getting them out to people already?
Honestly, Rick, I think I speak for a lot of scientists when I say I think it's nothing short of a miracle what's happened.
Wow. So does that cause any doubt in your mind or people's minds of the effectiveness that it happened as quickly as it did?
So that is a great question. So, one thing that I want to be sure to let people know is that miracles in science mean something different in terms of timelines and in other settings. So this vaccine that we're seeing right now, the mRNA platform, is actually been under study for over 20 years. So when we scientists talk about miracles,
Wow.
that's what we're referring to, right? That a technology that's been under study for 20 years can be turned on for a new disease quickly. So when we talk about speed in science, our timelines are still pretty slow. So that gives me a lot of reassurance, and I hope it gives others and the public too.
What do you say to people who have always been skeptical of vaccines?
Look, we honor people's emotions, whether it be fear, whether or not they just want what's best for their families. We also honor that there is a ton of really bad information out there, especially about vaccines. So we meet people where they are and really honor the emotion from where this is coming. I think the good news is that the scientific community, medical community, we as a collective have great trust in this vaccine. The technology has been under study for 20 years. The data on the clinical trials have been held to the highest standards of any study data I know of. There has been so much vetting, so much rigor, so many eyes on this. There's just been no room for any sort of shenanigans. So I hope that people know that the scientific and medical communities have great faith in this vaccine. And you know what? We will be writing on vaccines often on Dear Pandemic.
Oh, good.
It's helping boost confidence. Yeah.
And to really be effective, what percentage of the population needs to get this vaccine?
That's great. So we don't have a precise target, but we hear anywhere between 60 and 75%. So that's what we're aiming for. We certainly hope that that happens sooner rather than later, but it's going to take a little while because this is the most massive vaccine rollout campaign we've had, certainly in recent memory and perhaps ever. So we have to sit tight, but we are really hoping to hit that 60 to 75% mark in order to achieve what we call herd immunity. Which actually did, funny story, originate in cattle. So the term herd immunity, which is where the community in general is protected because enough individuals will not be susceptible to the disease, had its origins in veterinary science.
How about that? Lindsey Leininger is a clinical professor of business administration at Dartmouth's Tuck School of Business, but she might be even more proud that she's nerdy girl in chief at Dear Pandemic. And I told you all she was brilliant. I want to thank you so much for being with us, Lindsey.
Oh, Rick, thanks for having me.